Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Lucky Leprechaun. I'm going to be sipping on a little Merlot. And if you enjoy this video, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, chrome yellow, burnt umber, which I'll call brown. I have fluorescent purple, fire red, green oxide, and Mars black. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 10 round brush, and I have a number 5 round brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to, you know, that fancy palette that I use and all that good stuff. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So if you have your own materials and you want the image of the painting, that's there for you. You can just print it and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions for you as well down in the description. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our pot. I'm going to be using my pencil, and I'm going to give you a couple of markers, and we'll draw an outline that we'll be able to utilize in a little while. But I do want to kind of, let you know you can certainly freehand this. These pots of gold can be either like a cast iron pot, or they could even just be a bag of gold. So if you want yours to be a bag instead of a pot, it can certainly be wrinkly and bumpy and stuff. But I'm going to make mine look like a big black cast iron pot. So I'm going to have mine pretty symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about halfway into my canvas from left to right, wherever you feel is comfortable for you. This is about dead center for me. I'm going to come about 2 inches below that and make myself a little bit of a marker. And then I'm going to come maybe about 2 or 3 inches below that, make myself another marker. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the difference between these two, and I'm going to come over to the right hand side, maybe about 3 inches away from the edge of my canvas, and then do the same thing over on the left hand side, just about between those, come over to the left. And those are going to be the top and the bottom of the opening, and the left and the right of the opening. It's going to be just a big oval. So as you're doing this, you can use like a sketching kind of technique to do this. It does not have to be a perfect oval. It's going to be painted over by much pieces of gold and shiny things, and there's going to be little leprechaun hands that are going to be hanging onto it. So don't feel that this has to be a perfect oval. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the bottom of my canvas, over to the right hand part down on the bottom right. I'm going to make myself a mark about 1.5 inches away from the edge of my canvas. And I'm going to do the same thing over on the left hand side, about 1.5 inches away from the edge. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a curvy line from this corner here down to, or from the edge of my oval down to here. So this can really be as curvy as you want it to be. I'm going to come in a little bit like this, and then I'm going to bump it out like this and make a big bump over in through here. And then I'm going to attempt to do a similar curve on the other side, which doesn't always happen exactly the same, but I'm going to give it a good valiant effort here. So I'm going to come in a little ways, and then I'm just going to kind of curve it like this. I'm watching over there to see if I can do it pretty similar, and then I'm just going to go ahead and bump it out over here. And again, if it's not perfect, no worries. You can modify it a little bit as we go through the process. And then we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your outline done, of course you're working with pencil, you can adjust it as much as you want. You can get out your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm painting my sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, blue, and white. So as I'm painting this sky, my head tells me a rainbow happens when there is rain and sunshine. So I'm going to have part of my sky kind of dark and part of it light. I'm going to have it darker over on the left-hand side, and I'm going to make it lighter over on the right-hand side and maybe down towards the bottom a bit. So I'm going to be using blue, brown, and white on my brush at the same time. I'm starting up in the top left. I'm going to be using a long, like crisscross type brush stroke. And as I come down towards the bottom of my canvas and over towards the right, I will be using less brown and blue and more white. So what will happen is this is going to end up looking like it's a little cloudy, like maybe it has just rained, or maybe there's some storm clouds over on the left-hand side. You can get it to go as light or as dark as you want. You can have a lot of blue in it, you can have a lot of white in it, but because I'm doing this long crisscrossy type brush stroke, what may end up happening is we're going to get the illusion of small, maybe light clouds that are flying by or drifting by. And I like to kind of go back over the previous areas as they're drying, just with a light touch. This way it allows me to kind of blend a little bit more and get those colors to look a little bit softer with one another and get them to kind of marry one another a little bit more. But what I don't want to happen is have like a distinct section from dark over on the left to a line in the middle and then light over to the right. So you'll see that I just continue to kind of cross over these areas. And this, we're going for a nice whimsical painting. This doesn't have to look like a photograph. So if yours ends up looking a little bit different than you had expected, or a little bit darker, or a little bit bluer, or a little bit whiter, it's all right. It's all going to work. We have so many bits of information that are going to be on top of this, that the sky is really just background noise. So don't feel the need to make this sky super perfect. It is, again, just something that is adding an atmospheric dimension to our painting, so it doesn't have to be anything perfect. As I'm getting down towards my my pot, or my cauldron, I guess is otherwise known as, I am going right up to the edge of it. It's okay even if you paint into it a little bit. So don't feel that you have to sit here and paint around it. You can certainly just paint right into it. You'll most likely be able to see your pencil mark anyways if you're using acrylic paint. Acrylic paint does tend to be on the more translucent side, so just bump right into it. That's going to make it look more natural than if you were to sit here and paint around it. That holds true to whenever you are doing this type of style where you have one area of it that you're saving for later to paint. You want to keep the brush stroke in that background consistent through the whole thing. So if you were doing circles, you'd want to do circles all the way right up to the edge of this pot. If you're doing these crisscross left to right motion, you want to make sure that that's the type of brush stroke that you are performing the entire time. And then we are going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful sky on here, and of course you can keep tweaking it and getting these colors to blend as I'm tweaking it. I'm just using a light touch with the edge of my brush. And then I'm going to wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the base coat for our pot. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint. So it's going to be this area in through here. There is no special brush stroke. You just paint it on. The only time that we need to concentrate on doing anything other than coloring in the main area here is when we get up towards the edge of the pot. So I'm going to just go along the side here, going right to my pencil mark. I want to make sure that I cover my pencil mark so there's no evidence of me making that outline before I did the painting, which is one of those things you gotta make sure you get rid of your pencil marks, because otherwise it's not that you're cheating using the pencil marks, but it definitely looks unfinished if you have any pencil marks left over after you are done painting. But we're going to go right up to the edge in through here, and if your paint does not cover 100% and you still see little streaks or brush stroke marks, that's okay at this point, because we're going to be doing a second layer on top of this pot that's going to add some highlight to it. So at that point we'll be able to get rid of any brush stroke marks that you might have, because typically when you're doing a single layer with acrylic paint, especially, well, at really almost any color, but the darker colors tend to not cover as well. Black is a great coverage, but I can still see brush strokes, and that second layer will get rid of it. So I need to bring this lip of my pot partially around the back. So I'm going to just bring it maybe about a quarter of the way around the back like this, and just make sure that I get it to transition into the front nicely. It's okay if it's thinner or thicker in the background. We're going to be hiding that edge anyways. So I'm just kind of using the corner of my brush. I'm going about a quarter of the way, and then I just want to make sure that it naturally blends into this corner and through there. And then I'm going to add some handles over on the side. So I'm going to go up maybe, I don't know, maybe 3.5 inches, and I'm going to just do a big loop. This is where my little leprechaun feet are going to be resting. So this is going to be on one side, and then I'm just going to kind of loop it around with my brush like this. And if you run through wet paint like I did, my background was still wet, that's awesome, because we're going to be adding a highlight on top of there anyway. So if you detect your paint is a little bit wet, don't worry about it. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm doing pretty horizontal line, and then I will curve it around. And if you're using a bigger brush like I am, and the brush is too big for you to handle, you could certainly use a smaller brush through that process. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat on your pot, you can wash and dry the large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the base coat for our gold that's in our pot. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, yellow, and white, and some of you might also want to use a little red as well, and I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a gold base color. So how I'm going to do that, because I don't have gold on my palette, is, to me, whenever I look at the actual metallic gold, I see yellow and brown, a mixture of yellow and brown. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown, and I also know that I don't want it to be see-through, and to help with the opacity of my paint, I'm going to add a touch of white to it, and then I'm going to mix it around. So depending on the color of brown you're using and the color of yellow you're using, yours might end up very green to your eye. And if it does turn out a little bit too green for you, then what you can do is you can take a tiny dot of red paint and mix that in as well. So that will take care of the overbearing green side to it. I have a little bit pre-mixed here just so I could see where I was going, and you can see where I was going as well. But gold to me does have a little bit of a greenish hue to it. So I'm okay if mine looks a little on the greener side. I'm going to add just a touch more white to it because I know that it's going to go a little bit darker as it dries. So I want to just plan for that. Maybe just a little bit more. There we go. And this is about where I'm going with my base color. You might want yours to be more yellow, more brown, wherever, you know, your visual preference takes you. You could even test it out a little bit, let it dry and see where that's taking it. But we're going to do a lot more on top of the gold to get it to look like three-dimensional pieces of gold. So even if yours isn't the perfect tone right now, don't worry about it. So we're going to be putting it in this entire center area. And I also want to make myself a little bit of an outline above, or the gold is bumping into above the height of the pot in through here. So I'm just bumping out a couple of additional pieces. I don't want them to be really systematic looking, so maybe some are taller than others. And then I'm just coloring in the center. You don't have to color it in with any particular brush stroke. You can do it in circles, you can do it left to right. It doesn't really matter because, again, we're going to be painting so much on top of this that this base coat is really just providing us with that tonal value that we're going to want underneath. And even when you come towards this front region, you can have a couple of pieces of your gold just bumping over the edge of your pot. I wouldn't go hog wild because you don't want it to go too far like it looks like they're falling out, but you could certainly have a couple look like they're just resting over the edge a bit, which makes it fun, especially if you have edges on your pot that weren't perfect. That would be a great place to put a piece of gold hanging over the edge. And then we're going to be switching to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat for your gold in your pot, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting a rainbow. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors I'm using, if you remember from first grade, you'll probably know that the colors for the rainbow are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. But you don't have orange on your palette if you're following my palette. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself an orange color. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tiny bit of red and a tiny bit of yellow and pre-mix myself an orange color. So I just want to make sure that this is visibly different than my red and my yellow, because sometimes when we're pre-mixing colors like this on our palette, they tend to be too similar to one of the colors that we're mixing it with. So just make sure that it looks different than your red and your yellow. I'm not adding any white because I want, there we go, that's nice and different from those two. So I want my rainbow to be translucent, because every time I see a rainbow, I can see through it, and the rainbow is made up of the sunshine glistening off of the water, so it is a very translucent thing that we're seeing. So as I'm doing this, none of the paint that I'm using has a lot of white in it. So my red is translucent. I've got my orange that I just made out of my yellow, so I know that those all are. My purple, blue, and green are also very see-through. I will be, during this process, also using water on my brush. So that's going to help for my colors to really be nice and see-through. I'm going to go kind of fast, so that way as I'm doing this, I can keep moving my paint in order for it to blend in with the next color that's near it. So I am going to use a good amount of paint. I'll use a touch of water on my brush, and I will most likely be washing, like dipping my brush in my water cup a lot to wipe off the colors. I'm going to try and keep you up to speed as I do it all, but I know that on this type of thing that I'm painting, I do tend to kind of just go fast and keep whipping my brush around to make sure that I get that paint to do what I want while it's still wet. That's the whole key for me, is keeping that paint moving while it's wet. So you might use either water or medium you can put in your paint, which will keep it moist for a little bit longer, so you can get these colors to blend in and they transition from one to the next and look pretty natural. So if I haven't scared you enough yet, let's go. I'm going to put a little bit of water and red paint on my brush at the same time, because I'm going red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. I'm going to have my rainbow starting up in the top left-hand corner. It's going to be pretty narrow up here, and then it's going to swoop around like this and come back over into this corner of my pot over here. So I'm starting up in the top left-hand corner, up in through here. This is going to be where my red starts. I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is over here. So even if you have to make yourself a little bit of a marker so you know where you're going, and I'm going to just kind of travel along here like this. And you might be able to detect how wet my paint is right now. I'm adding more red to my brush just to get this to have a wide enough area for myself. And I'm going to keep adding to this red until I get a big enough section. I do keep my brush moving in really long strokes to keep this natural curve that I'm adding to the rainbow, to make sure that that happens. And you can bring it in front of your gold if you want to, because the rainbow could totally shine on that. If you want to have a soft edge over on this left-hand side, you can just take your brush with a little bit of water, or if it's already, if your paint is still wet, you can just kind of rub it in a little bit. And you don't want to rub it too hard, because what'll happen is you might end up lifting that paint right off of the canvas. So I'm just pretty happy with that color. So I'm going to start picking up some of my orange now, and I want these colors to overlap. So I'm doing the orange right on top of my red a little bit, and I know that I want this to be a little bit smaller as I go towards the top of my rainbow. And I also know a bunch of my rainbow is going to be hidden by my my cute leprechaun's hat. So if I don't get this perfect, I'm not terribly concerned, because I know that, again, a lot of it is going to be hidden. But if you can get these colors to kind of talk to one another and overlap one another and look like they're turning into one another, so the red turns into the orange, which turns into the yellow, and each one of these colors is created by the color that it sits next to and is combining with. So right now I just washed my brush and put a little bit of yellow on it. So I've got my yellow color, and again I've got these wider down at the bottom, and I again am using water with my color. So I'm not really watering down the color on my canvas, but I am picking up a little bit of water with my brush, so that way it can be more on the fluid side on my canvas. And again, I'm overlapping these colors a little bit so they look like they're talking to one another, and I'm trying to keep this nice natural arc with these soft edges to the colors. So if you keep a soft edge from one color to the next, as you go to blend it in with the next color, you'll have a more successful time doing that. I have a little bit of a trouble spot here with my red. I might work on that in a minute to get it to smooth out, but right now I'm just going to go right into my green paint. So I just picked up a little bit of green and some water so I can get this to be nice and translucent and have it blend in with that yellow a bit. And of course, as I'm going around the corner here, I know that I want it thinner, my rainbow to be thinner up towards the top. So I'm not pressing as hard with my brush, but I am making sure that I keep a pretty similar curve. At least I'm trying to anyways. It's so funny because I have to kind of confess here. One of the most difficult paintings I ever did was a painting that I did for my father. When I was in my I want to learn how to paint stage years ago, I had my family all give me I let them pick something that they wanted me to paint. My dad had taken a beautiful picture of a double rainbow. I'm picking up some blue right now. And he said, I would like you to paint me this double rainbow. And of course I was going for photorealism. It was one of the hardest paintings I've painted in my entire life. So every time I go to paint a rainbow, I'm like, oh no, I'm painting a rainbow. But they're fun and they're challenging if you want them to look natural. If you want them to look more like storybook, then that definitely takes out the pressure of having them translucent and, you know, having this opacity or this see-throughness to them. But you know, it's fun, it's challenging. You get to learn how to get these colors to blend with one another. But again, water is my friend when I'm doing this. And then I've got my purple color left that I'm doing. So again, purple and water is my combination here. And again, if you know, you can go back and do a second layer on these colors to get them to talk to one another a little bit more. It's totally up to you. However you feel that it has come out for you, you can certainly modify it a bit. I'm going to try and keep this purple edge a little bit on the softer side, almost as if it is fading into that sky. So I'm really trying to make sure that this edge is a little bit softer, even if I didn't get the edges really soft in the interior of the rainbow. As I'm coming around here with this purple, I'm trying to get it a little bit softer. So again, water is my friend. Definitely want some purple up in through here. And then let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We're actually going to be using our pencil for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful rainbow all nice and created, and you've got soft edges maybe, or maybe yours is nice and solid. Maybe you've gone for a really bold rainbow. Whatever has tickled your fancy and made your eye happy. Once you've got it all done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your pencil, and you can get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are using our pencil and we're going to draw an outline for our face and our hat. So I'm going to again give you kind of a couple of little markers, and we'll just kind of connect those markers, and by the time we're done we'll have a good space for our adorable face and floppy, big, huge Irish hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming up from my gold, maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and I'm going to make myself a little bit of a mark, and I'm going to go up from that maybe about another inch, make myself another mark. I'm going to split the difference between those two and go to the left and to the right, and I'm going to stop maybe mid rainbow, somewhere in through here, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe about 3 or 4 inches away from the edge of the canvas in through here. That's going to be the rim of my hat. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to give this cute little floppy edge to it. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. I'm just kind of bringing it from this area and just flopping it down a little bit, bringing it back up. And it doesn't have to be exactly like mine. Just use your imagination. This is going to be a fun added thing to our painting. So maybe yours is more on the rounded edges, maybe you've got more pointy edges, maybe yours looks more like a cowboy hat as opposed to, or a knitted hat, or, you know, just use your imagination. It doesn't have to be exactly as mine. So that's going to be the rim of the hat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make the sides of my faces, or my face, there's not two faces, my side of my one face. So I'm going to bring this in maybe about 2 inches from the edge of my bucket or my pot, maybe, you know, 2 inches or so from the edge of that. And I'm just going to give myself a curved little line, something like this and something like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the top of my hat on. So I need the hat to look like it's going to fit the face. So you want to, with the top of the hat, it's got to be at least as wide as the face is. So you can come up from here just go straight up and start it there. But I'm going to start mine out just a little bit to tell the viewer maybe he's got some hair underneath there or something that's going to bump it out. So I've got mine coming out maybe a little bit in through here, and then maybe starts around in through here. I'm going to have my hat really tall, and it's going to pass over my rainbow. So I'm going to give myself 2 markers for the corners of my hat. I'm going to come up to the right hand corner of my canvas. Somewhere about here is where I'm going to designate the corner of my hat to be, and I'm going to come over to the left and maybe up a little bit. So I've got this one is a little bit in from the edge of this edge of the hat and up, and then this one is a little bit out farther than the edge of that. So it's going to look a little fun and tipped. And then I'm just going to connect my dots. So in through here, maybe I've got this one coming in like this. Maybe it comes over like this a bit. And again, just have fun. There can be bumps in it and ripples in it and whatever you imagine it to be. And I'm going to have both sides of mine looking a bit different from one another. So again, yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. And then at the top, maybe I'll get it to come down and ripple over like this. But again, make yours as fun as you want it to be. And then I'm going to do a band above the rim. It's going to be like a black band. So I'm just going to come up maybe about 1.5 inches and give myself another little line in through here. And that's all I'm going to do for the outline. We're going to switch to our medium brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the first layer of our skin, which will be on the face, and we're going to do some on-the-fly little fingers too. So on the face and on the hands. I'm using my medium brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, white, yellow, and red. And I'm going to use those 4 colors to pre-mix myself whatever skin color I would like. So I've got myself a pre-mixed color right in through here so you can see where I'm going. I used my medium brush. What I did was I took a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of white, and spun it all together. So you'll quickly find, ooh, that's too dark. So you add a little bit more white to it. I usually use my own skin tone as my visual reference. So if I see this and I say, ooh, I can take my brush and put it right next to my skin and say, oh, well, that's a little bit too dark or too yellow or too red. You can adjust it after that. So I think I'm going to make this a little bit lighter with a touch more yellow, red, and white. And I also know that it's going to get a little bit darker as it dries, so I can account for that. And you can make it whatever tone you want. You could use your neighbor's skin as your visual reference point. You could make up a skin color. That's looking pretty good to me. It's not exactly like that, but I'm digging it. So I'm just going to mix both of them together to get myself a nice neutral color here. And then once I've got the color that I want, which is always a little bit darker than my natural skin because I know I'm going to add highlights, which will bring it into more of a realistic color. And I think, so I have some Irish in me as well, and I know that me and my relatives tend to be on the redder side. And in the winter we're more blue, but in the summer we're much more red. So you can certainly tweak this into whatever skin color you want. But we're painting an Irish painting, so if it goes on the redder side, I think that's all right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just color in this entire area that I have designated for the face, and I'm bringing it right up to my pencil mark. And if you can see through your pencil mark at this, or see through your paint and visually see your pencil at this point, that's okay, because again, we're going to be doing other stuff to this. I'm bringing it right to the edge of my gold, and even if you bump into your gold a little bit, that will be all right as well. And then once I've got the face covered with my skin color, I'm going to just on the fly we didn't draw them because there wasn't really much need to. I'm going to make myself a couple of little leprechaun fingers coming over the side because he's hanging on to the bucket. So I'm going to go somewhere over in this direction. I have no idea how many fingers a leprechaun has or how many would be visible on my painting, so I'm just going to give them maybe 3 or 4 fingers, and I'm just going to do a couple of little bumps like this, 1, 2, maybe 3, and then just close off the edge like that's the you know, his knuckles or something. And again, you're probably going to be able to see through the paint at this point. Don't worry about it. We're just putting it into place right now. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing over here. This one I know is going to be holding a clover. So I'm going to have this one go, maybe here's 1 finger, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, and then here's the edge of the knuckles. And then I think I'm going to give a little either thumb or the wrist or something in through there. So later when I put the clover, I've got a place to actually rest it. And then we're going to switch brushes to our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your skin on, you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our pot area, the black area in through here. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors that I'm using are black and white. And how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be adding a little bit of a highlight around the rim of my pot. I'll also be adding a little bit of a highlight along the handles. And then I'm going to add a highlight in the middle of my pot because that's going to give it the shape or the form. It's going to tell the viewer that it bumps out a little bit in through here. And I know that because it dips in through here, so it tells me already that this bumps, so it probably is rounded in through here and the light would be hitting it the most here. I might add a little bit extra of a highlight on the right hand side because that too is also where my light source is coming from. So I'm going to start with some black and a little bit of white on my brush. So it's mostly black with a little bit of white. And I'm going to start in through here, just giving myself a little bit of a highlight, making it on the grayer side. My tip to doing a step like this where you are adding a second layer or a highlight like this is you don't ever really need too much paint, especially since we have a nice black background to it. We're really only adding this accent of the shape of the object. If you end up picking up a ton of paint, a lot of white and a lot of black, you may end up over blending it and having the whole thing one color. So start out with a little bit of paint and just add as you need it. So I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight in through here. And again, I don't have much paint on my brush, and I know that I've got my little pieces of gold, but I'm adding this highlight a little bit away from my gold, so it almost tells the viewer that it might dip down in, or there's a little lip to it. And if you find that you put too much white, just bring back a little bit of that black, and that will help you to get a more smooth transition into it. I do want to make sure that I have the entire pot painted, so I see some brush strokes visible from my first step over here, so I just added more black to my brush to make sure that I don't have any unpainted areas on my pot. Make sure that I've got this whole area painted nice and dark. I'm going to add a bit more of a highlight too on this right hand side, and I'll probably add a little bit more in that center as well. So I'm adding a touch of white to my brush right now to add a little bit more of a highlight over here. I'm going to hit the handles in a second, but right now I'm just making sure that I have told the story of there being a light source over on this right hand side. So that's where this highlight right here is coming into play. And then in a minute I'm going to, and I have the handle here as well, so I'm kind of avoiding hitting that. But if you do bump into that, that's an easy fix to, which I just bumped into mine. That's an easy correction when you go to paint the actual handle itself. I'm going to add a bit more lightness in through here just to tell the story of the shape of this object, making sure that it is in fact bright enough and that it tells the viewer that it's round. And you can get this to be pretty darn bright in through here. It's all gonna be how much that light source is adding that volume to the form, or how much it bumps out. And the more you can get contrast in these colors, the more the pot is going to actually look shiny, or have almost like a reflective type element to it. So now that I've got that bright enough, I feel that this is pretty good in through here. Maybe a touch more in through here just to give that a bit more of a shine. I'm going to go ahead and do the handles themselves. And the handles, again, I want that highlight to be on the top side to tell the viewer where that light source is. And I'm just going to bring this right into this side, because this is the side that it'll be in front on this side. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just putting a little bit of the black and the white on my brush, staying on the top side of that handle, and just bringing this in through here. And if you wanted to add even more dimension to these little handles, you can add a touch of, I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. You can make sure that there's a lot of black right next to them as they are almost entering or being fused to the pot, and that'll add just that additional element of dimension to it. And then we are going to be using this large brush for the next step. So once you've got your pot all nice and popping out of your canvas, you can wash and dry the large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our hat and our boots. So I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using green and brown paint. And there's nothing tricky about this. I'm just taking some green paint and I'm painting in the rim of my hat, as well as the main big section up top. I'm not doing any fancy brush strokes. I'm just kind of getting the paint to go to the edge of my pencil. And if my hat grows a little bit throughout the process, I'm totally okay with that, which might very well happen. And if you're using a similar paint to me, I guess I should probably erase that pencil mark in a minute. You are going to be able to see through your paint, because again, it is translucent. So don't worry about that in the least bit. If you can still see your rainbow underneath, that's quite all right, because we're going to be doing a second layer. This is just to give us what I refer to as my primer coat on a particular section. This just really helps to set the tonal value where you need it, and to, especially since acrylic paint tends to be see-through, this helps to eliminate that the risk that you run of seeing the background colors or the colors that you've painted underneath it. And when you're doing this, if you want to bump out a couple of areas so it doesn't look so straight, feel free to do that. And then once I've got the green sections on here, I am going to wash my brush. So I've got my green sections on here, and you can see I didn't use any fancy brush stroke. And I am, let me just get this little tiny area here. I'm going to wash and dry the brush, and I'm going to do my brown areas. So my brown areas are going to be this band, and then my boots, which I will do my boots on the fly. I have not pre-drawn them. I'm just going to give them a couple of cute little shapes. When I do this band, if you want it to look a little bit more three-dimensional, you can bring it out a little bit farther than your outline on that left and the right, and that's going to make it look like this one piece of fabric or belt type material. Maybe it's a piece of leather or something that is the band on the hat is sticking out a bit further than the actual hat itself. So that will make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So just a little quick trick there for you. And then I'm going to do my boots, and you can make your boots whatever shape that you want them to be. I'm going to have mine just kind of sitting on the edge here, so I need a little leg that's coming out. And again, I'm using a larger brush, but if you want to use a smaller brush because it's more comfortable for you, feel free to do so. So I've got my leg coming out like this, and again, if it's not perfect, don't worry about it, because you're going to have a bunch of different stuff that we're going to be putting on top. This is the bottom of the boot, so we're going to see the sole or the bottom of the boots as I've designed the painting. I think I want this to be a little bit thicker. These almost look like, for those of you who know what UGG boots are, these kind of resemble those in my opinion. Which can come in all different fun sizes and colors and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. And if it makes it easier, you can almost do the sole or the bottom of the foot first. So you could either do the leg or the foot, whatever works for you. I think this one I'm going to just kind of, maybe I'll show you the other process of doing the sole or the foot part first. And I'm getting it to hang over or kind of hook onto the handle of the pot. So that's how he's kind of keeping himself up, and you can put the little leg coming in through here. So whatever width you want it to be is totally fine. You can make it a skinnier leg or a wider leg, whatever works. I guess it would have made sense to do the leg first, because now I'm going to want to do that foot on top of it. So whatever works. And then we are going to be, we're going to actually switch to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat for your hat and your boots on here, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our face and our hands and our hair of our cute little leprechaun. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors that I'm going to be using are my skin color. I'm also going to use brown, red, and white. And if I use anything else, I'll let you know. So I'm going to start with brown paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm using my brown paint, and if you want, you could use a little water on your brush too if you're having any difficulty controlling it. I'm going to take my brown paint, and I'm in essence going to be making my shadowy areas. So my shadowy areas are going to be around my big bubble nose, underneath my hat. I'm also going to have some tufts of orange curly hair along the sides. Maybe that'll be the sides of some beard or something. I'm going to have little shadow underneath my nose. I'm going to have little shadows underneath or inside my fingers and underneath them. So I'm starting with brown paint. If you run into trouble during this shadow type section, you can certainly pick up some of your original skin color to assist you. So how I'm going to do this first is I'm going to, in essence, kind of outline my little bubble nose. I've got mine maybe about 2 inches wide, and I want it to go all the way up to the top of my hat and all the way down to the bottom of my, or to where my gold is. So something like this. And then what I'm going to do is, with that wet brown that's on my brush, you can again put a little bit of water or whatnot. I'm going to put a shadow underneath my hat, something like this, and then another one over here. And the trick is you want that shadow where it touches the skin part to blend in a little bit. So that's where your water is going to help you out, and or your original skin color. So I'm just kind of rubbing it in as it's drying, and that's going to help make it look a little bit more realistic as far as realistic leprechauns go. But if you have a firm shadow, that might take away a little bit from the natural kind of contour of it. So I just added a touch of water, and then I'm just kind of blending it into that skin part. And again, you could pick up a little bit of that original skin, but we're going to add a highlight in a second too. So I'm also going to be utilizing a little bit of that brown down by the gold, as if the gold might be casting a little bit of a shadow on the face itself. And again, I'm just almost outlining the top of the gold and getting it to blend in with the face color a little bit. And I'm also going to do the same thing where I want the beard or the side of the hair to go over on the side. So I'm using that brown, and this one can be like a squiggly kind of line because this is going to indicate the shadow that the beard or the hair is kind of casting onto the face. And you could even bring this out a little bit further if you wanted to throughout this area to show little shadows inside the beard that we're going to be putting on in a second here. And then I'm going to utilize this brown to give myself a bit of a shadow at the bottom of the hand as well as between those little fingers. And when you get into these smaller areas, oh, that was wet paint that I just stuck my finger in. When you get into these smaller areas, the gradient that I created up top to meet the skin is not as important as just getting a little bit of a dark line on there. So I wouldn't worry terribly too much about these being a perfect gradient. Then what I'm going to do is I want to make my cheeks and stuff nice and rosy and give them a little bit of highlight to them, but I also have my beard to contend with, or my hair as I called it earlier. So I want my hair to have a lot of texture in it. So I'm going for some orange hair. So I'm not going to wash my brush yet. I'm just using that brown and picking up some of that original orange that I used in my rainbow. And I'm going to swirl it around in these little circular type brush stroke. And before I leave this beard hair area, I'm going to pick up a touch of white on my brush and get these little bits of highlights on my orange hair or beard, whatever you want to consider it to be. And then I'm washing and drying this brush to finish the rest of the skin on the face. So the skin on the face, you could use this regular skin color plus white just to make it a little bit brighter, but I want to give mine a little bit of a rosy appearance to it. So I'm going to make some of my skin color a little bit lighter and pinker. So I'm going to take my skin color, I'm going to add a bit of red and a bit of white. So what'll happen is I'm going to just take that original skin color and make it lighter and rosier. And then that's going to be how I get some good dimension in the cheeks and the nose. So I got myself a little bit of a rosy color. I'm going to add that rosiness to my nose, something like this. And I'm going to also add it to my cheeks and through here. And now I'm going to pick up some of my original skin color to make sure that it blends in with my original skin color. And if you needed to, you could pick up a touch of the brown too to make sure that it blended in where you had those, oops, that was a little wet paint in through there, to make sure that it blended in where you had those shadowy areas. And along the edge of the nose, if you wanted that to look like it was a little bit more in the shadow, even at the bottom of the nose, you could add a bit more darkness at the bottom of the nose. And then I'm going to add a really bright little highlight on the tip of the nose in a minute. Let me just get the bottom of this nose to look like it is got a little bit of contour on it. So I'm just adding a bit of darker tone down at the bottom. And here comes the magic on the nose. I didn't wash my brush, I just added a bit of white. And you don't have to put the highlight right at the tippy top. I'm going to put it close to the tippy top, like that. And then I'm wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm just going to get it to blend in with the rest of the nose. Oh, so again, highlights I like. As soon as I start adding my highlights, I really just get all so excited. So you can keep tweaking this and make it a little bit brighter if you want to, but that's looking so cute to me. You could add more to the cheeks if you wanted to. You just want to make sure those cheeks look like they, you know, blend into the neighboring areas, so you can do whatever you need to with those. And I got to do the same thing to the fingers. So I'm just adding a bit of that, that pink to it to give a little bit of that pinkness rosiness to it, and then I'll take a touch of white without washing my brush, give myself little kind of highlights on the top of the hand. And again, it doesn't have to be anything perfect. We're just going for something that's really cute and representational of this adorable little gnome. And then I'm going to be using this same medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your face and your hands and your hair, whatever way that you would like them to be, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our gold. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors I'm using are white, yellow, gold, and you can also use a little bit of orange and brown as well. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to kind of talk about my thought process through it, and then you can adjust yours accordingly. So the gold pieces that I know of in these leprechaun type pots are typically round. I suppose they could be, you know, rectangle gold bars or, you know, things of that nature. And it's just a pile of gold coins. So I'm going to do this in a very freestyle kind of way. But when I'm painting, I will always kind of be using a circular or an oval type brush stroke that's going to form these pieces of gold. I am going to attempt to have them brighter or lighter with more white on the right hand side and a little bit darker on the left hand side. That will just give you the illusion that they're being illuminated by whatever light source is over on the right. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to take that gold that I pre-mixed earlier and add some yellow and white to it. So this is going to give me a lighter version of that original gold that I used. So I've got a lighter version, and this is where I'm just going to kind of put a whole bunch of pieces of gold into place. They can overlap one another. They can, you don't necessarily have to just do ovals or them all looking exactly the same. You could just do the edge of one that maybe is underneath another one, or you could do one that is on top of one. So they don't all have to be exactly in a full-on shape, because they're going to be laying on top of each other. You're going to have little corners poking out here and there where they where one rests underneath another one. So don't feel that you have to do just one oval next to each other, next to another. You can certainly, like I know that I have these little pieces that are falling off the edge, so maybe I put a couple in through there. You know, you can certainly have some that are the full-on oval type shape, but again, they don't all have to be 100% represented as the full shape. And I'm going to do some shadows in a minute, and I'm going to do some highlights. So once I've got, in essence, kind of a messy assembly of oval type coins, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about where I want some shadows and some highlights on these coins in order to make them a little bit more realistic looking. So you don't necessarily have to wash your brush. I'm just going to pick up a touch of brown with my dirty brush and give myself some little shadows along the edges of some of these coins that might be sticking out. And my shadow is on this left hand side, so that's where I'm just going to naturally start to put little shadows. You might have little shadows in between some of the pieces of coin, but all the while I'm using this kind of circular type brush stroke that's going to give the illusion that we are in fact seeing these round type objects. So once you've got little shadows poking through, and the original color that we used is also utilized as a nice shadow type color in between some of these coins. So now that I've done that, and I'm pretty happy with where I've got those placed, now I can wipe my brush off, wash my brush, whatever I feel the need to do. I'm just going to wipe mine off on my paper towel and pick up some of just my yellow, and this is going to add that really bright kind of illuminating value to it. I'm going to also pick up a touch of my orange as well. The orange that I did for the hair and for the rainbow, I can utilize that with a bit of yellow. This is going to add just more tones to my pieces of gold, so they don't all just look like that bright yellow, because I don't feel like that happens. I feel like there might be little pieces that almost look like they've got a little bit of copper in them, or a little different hue. They might be reflecting some of the colors off in the, from his beard or from his hair or from the rainbow. So I like to have a variety of different tones within that. And now I'm going to start popping on those bright highlights. So I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up white, but I'll probably also pick up a little bit of yellow as well. And my light source is over on this right hand side. So that's where a lot of these highlights are going to be represented on that right hand side. But again, I don't just have to have them on the right hand side, and they can blend in a little bit. They can be on top of the whole surface of one of the coins. So you can really just kind of dictate to the viewer what they're seeing by just giving them a little smudge of a highlight in through there. Maybe this one is just kind of peeking out from behind, so you're just seeing the edge of it. You can utilize more of that, the regular yellow or your lighter version of the gold, whatever you want to do. That maybe this one's sitting right on top, whatever you want to do to add this bit of information to it. But I am going to make sure that that right hand side is the brightest. So even though I am adding some highlights over here on the left hand side, I'm going back to that right hand side in a minute to add some of just white with mostly white. I didn't wash my brush, so there's probably a little bit of yellow still on there, but this is definitely going to be my area that speaks the most of the shine of these coins. And again, you don't have to do the entire coin with the highlight, just maybe a little smudge of it. And then even if you just kind of rub it into a portion of that coin, you can have a little tiny tip of it that's just sticking out and catching the light over from this right hand side. And then you just kind of keep tweaking it until you feel that you've accomplished what you want. And this is because there's so many little lines and highlights and shadows on this. This is one of those steps I definitely, and it even happened to me when I was doing my sample painting, walk away, stand away, paint your as much information as you want, and then walk away, even go into another room and come back and look at it, and you'll notice that all of these little bits of lines and stuff really made a difference, but you'll be able to see it through another set of eyes if you step away from it for a minute. So get as much done as you want, and then step away, and then come back. And if you feel like you want to add more to it, feel free to do so. I'm going to be traveling on to the next step in a second here, and I'm going to be utilizing my medium paintbrush. Actually, no, let's go for our big paintbrush for the next step. So once you've got your gold on here, you can put your medium paintbrush away, take out your large paintbrush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing the green part of our hat. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are black, green, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put my shadow on first, then I'm going to get my shadow to blend in with the rest of the hat, and then I'll put my highlight on. So for me, I want this hat to look like it's kind of bumping out in through here. So for the brim, I'm going to put my shadows on the exterior sides, and then my highlight is going to be in here. And then on the main part of the hat, I want it to look like it's all kind of like lumpy and bumpy. So I'm going to put some shadow over here on the left side, maybe a little shadow up in through here where it just kind of dips down. And then I'll do my main color and then some highlights. So the trick here is do not use a lot of paint. the less paint you use, the more control that you have. So I'm going to use just a tiny bit of black paint on my large brush, and I'm going to start over here on the left hand side, and I'm just going to kind of rub it in and then just pull it out just a little bit. And if you feel that you have too much paint, you can always just take your brush and wipe it off on your paper towel. I don't necessarily recommend using water in this particular step, only because I know that it will pull the paint right off, and by using black and the other colors we're using, it might be a little bit dangerous. So just a little bit of paint will work, as opposed to it being watered down. And then I'm just kind of dry brush rubbing it into the main area. I'm going to do the same for up top where I want my shadow to be. So I have a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to just kind of paint it along the edge where I want that shadow to be evident. And then making sure I don't have too much paint on my brush, I'm going to just start to rub it into the main area of the hat. And the trick here is just to get a soft edge where it is going into the hat. You can have a hard edge over where it meets the exterior part, but as it's going into the hat, just using a dry brush to get a soft edge works. So I'm going to take a little bit more black. I'm going to have a bit of a shadow up in through here, just to show a little bit of a dip down in the hat. Taking my brush, wiping it on my paper towel, and just getting this to blend in with the rest of the green. And you can have this travel wherever you want. Maybe you have a tiny bit over in through here. I didn't reload my brush, I just used the remnants of the black. So now that I've got that on there, what I'm going to do, if you have a ton of black on your brush, you can wash it, but make sure that you dry it. And then you're going to pick up just that regular, the base coat green, and get that shadow to blend into the base coat. So I'm just taking a little bit of green and overlapping it a bit into my shadow area. That should do the trick. If you needed to, you could certainly pick up a touch more black as well, but just overlapping it should provide you with the blend that you need. I picked up more green, making sure that these areas up in through here blend well, just overlapping them, because the green is translucent, so I know that overlapping it with a dry brush should provide me with enough coverage. I am going to again do a little bit of a highlight too, so if I don't have perfect coverage right now, my highlight will allow me to get the coverage that I need. And I'm just bringing this green all the way up to where it meets my shadowy area, and overlapping that shadow area just a bit with almost, when I'm getting to that shadow area, I have very little paint on my brush. So that's allowing me to get it to overlap a little bit and show the shadow underneath it as well. And then I'm just bringing this all the way up to the top. And now that I've got those on there, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a tiny bit of white paint to get my highlight area in the center spot. And I know that I just painted it with green, so this is going to provide me with a nice blend, especially if my green is a little bit wet. That's great. And then I just pull it out towards those, towards the darker area. And you know, I've done this 1,000 times, so I can tell the pressure that I need, the amount of paint that I need. But if this is just a first shot for you, you might need to do this a couple of times just to get used to the different, how much paint you need and how you can get it to blend in with the neighboring section. And there's different ways to go about blending and doing these little highlights. So again, this is one way, and it might take you a minute to get your rhythm down, but I'm just using a very little bit of paint and just kind of working it into that neighboring area. And I'm going to do the same thing on the top of the hat. So I want a little bit of highlight up in this top right hand corner. And again, it doesn't have to be at the real edge of it. I'm going to have one over in through here, and then I'm going to have one somewhere in this middle area to give to show some shape to it. So I put my green or my white paint on there, and then I'm just gonna slowly start blending it in with the neighboring areas. And your paint may dry faster than mine. Mine takes a little bit to dry, so I can sometimes just kind of put it in areas and go work somewhere else and just come back to it. But if yours dried too quickly on you, you can certainly pick up some of that green with your white to get it to blend in a little bit more. But you can certainly just kind of keep adding these layers until you find that you've got that appearance of it being three-dimensional, and it's got some areas that are poking out and some areas that are dipping in. Maybe you want yours a lot lighter than mine or a lot darker than mine. Just wherever your visual preference is where you should take it. You know, this doesn't have to be exactly the same formation that mine is. And then we are going to be, we're going to switch to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your hat all nice and fluffed out here, you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are finishing the band and the boots. We do have a buckle that we're gonna put on the band, but that'll be a future step. So I'm using my medium brush, and this is gonna show you a similar technique to what we did on the main hat. We're doing, in essence, the same thing that we did in through here, but we're using a smaller brush. So you get to kind of feel out how different brushes would work for the same type of process. I'm going to be using brown, black, and white, and I'm going to be doing it for my boots and my band. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to do my band first, and then we'll move down to the buckles. So I'm going to start over on the left-hand side, give myself a bit of black paint over on the left, maybe bring it down in through here a little bit, and I'm just going to rub it into that brown, the base coat that we had, and give myself some soft edges as it starts to transition into this brown area. So I'm going to do that both on the left and on the right side. So I just reloaded my brush with a little bit of black paint, getting it all the way to the edge, and maybe in this little crease a little bit. If you have a ton of paint on your brush, you may want to wipe it off on your paper towel, or, you know, find a way to get some of it off. And then once I have that on there, I'm going to pick up some of my regular brown without washing my brush, get those two sections to blend in together. And again, doesn't have to be a perfect blend. These are of a canvas or a leather type material that we're trying to emulate, so they can have lumps and bumps in them. And then I'm going to pick up a touch of brown and white on my brush at the same time to get this highlight area in through here. So we did, in essence, the same thing that we did for the rim of the hat, only we're using a smaller brush. So you can certainly just have fun with it if you're really just going for a lighter area in here and darker on the sides. So on the boots, I'm gonna use the same thought process. I've got black paint on my brush. I've got a shadow, which is gonna be at the bottom part of the boot, the leg part of the boot. And then I'm just kind of rubbing it into that main section. I feel like I have too much paint on my brush, but I was going to wash it, but then I figured, oh, I could utilize it right here on the bottom of the sole of the boot. So I'm going to just use a little bit of that black paint down there, get it to rub into the main brown area. Then I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up some of the base brown color that we used to get these two sections to blend in better with one another. The only trouble spot you're going to have is probably where the sole of the boot meets the leg of the boot. So you just want to make sure that you have enough contrast in those two spots, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second when I go to add my highlight. Enough contrast means that you'll be able to see one in front of the other. They have to be lighter or darker than one another. So now that I've got that brown on there, I'm just picking up a bit of brown and white, and I'm adding my little highlight on the top of these sections like that and like this. And this is where I'm going to add a bit more highlight in through there so you can see the edge of the sole of the boot next to the leg part. So we've got that, and then I'm just going to rub this in like this. And of course you could have yours as exciting or as simple as mine are. Mine is definitely on the more simple side. Just giving myself a good highlight there on the edge so you can make sure you see the difference. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So reloading my brush with a bit of black paint, giving myself a shadow along the bottom of the leg, getting it to rub into the leg a little bit, wiping my brush off on my paper towel as I need to, get that to blend in a little bit, and then doing a bit of the black at the bottom edge of the sole of the boot, and just getting it to blend in, picking up some of my original brown paint to get those two sections to blend in nicely together. Doing the same thing in through here, just a nice second layer of that. Now I'm going to pick up a bit of brown and white for my highlight, put it at the top, put it at the top, and then just get it to blend in with that main section. And then we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your cute little leprechaun boots on here, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and just get a nice little highlight over here. There we go. And get ready for the next step. All right, so we cannot paint a leprechaun pot of gold rainbow painting without putting the luckiest charm of all, which is a 4-leaf clover in it. So we're going to paint that next. We're going to use a small brush. The colors that I'm using are green, white, and brown. So how I'm going to start this is with my small brush and just green paint. So the clover leaves to me look like heart shapes. So I'm going to make 4 heart shapes with the point of the heart meeting in the middle. I'm going to have a pretty big one over here, so I'm going to start this with 1 heart. And you can color in the hearts as you go along, just with green paint. And I'm going to do 4 of them because it's a 4-leaf clover. You probably figured that part out though. So something like this. And you can have yours as large or as small. Maybe you want your leprechaun to have a bouquet of 4-leaf clovers. Whatever makes your lucky heart happy, you can make as many as you want. And then I've got my 4th one over here. Maybe there's 1 4-leaf clover and 1 3-leaf clover, which are usually the only ones that I can find. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up some brown paint, and I'm going to use brown for the stem of my clover. So I know that it's got to come out the hand, and I'm just going to do like a gentle curved line, like it's coming out in through here, and then it's just going to meet my clover somewhere, because this stem can be coming out the center in the back somewhere. Just make sure that you got a nice good coverage on there. I suppose if you wanted to, you could add, I'm adding a touch of white onto my brush to add a little bit of a highlight on my stem. So it depends on how 3-dimensional you want it to look. Then what I'm going to do is I'm adding some more brown to my brush, and I'm putting a little shadowy darker area in the center, just so it doesn't look flat. I'm going to just do a little starburst out that center just to give it a little bit of dimension in the center of the flower. So I'm really just taking brown paint and just pulling it from the center. I called it a flower. Well, what is a 4-leaf clover? It's definitely not a flower. Maybe it's a little plant. That's what it is. So I'm washing my brush, and I'm going to add little highlights to these leaves with white and green on my brush at the same time. And I'm just using a carefree type of brush stroke to add these little bits of highlights along the edges, and I'm going to add little stripes throughout it just to give it a bit of dimension so it's not so flat of a piece of plant. And I guess if you wanted it lighter or darker, feel free to make yours as light or as dark as you want. And then we have one more step that we're going to be doing on the painting. I think just one more, maybe one or two. The next step that we're going to be doing is with the large brush. So once you've got your beautiful clover all nice and created, you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. I knew I was missing something last time when I said we had one or two steps. It is definitely at least two steps, and I don't want to use the large brush for the next step. I want to use my small brush because we have the buckle and we have our shine, and I want the shine to go on top of the buckle. So we're doing the buckle next, which is the small brush. So the colors that I'm going to be using are the gold color that we created for the coins, as well as white and black, maybe a little yellow too. But I'm going to start with just my gold color that I created for the coins. And I'm just going to see the top portion and the side portions. The bottom portion is going to be hidden by the rim of the hat. I'm going to have mine a little bit to the right of the nose. So I'm going to have this one, and there may be about, I've got the edges maybe about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch wide. It's not very far at all. So that, and it goes above the band itself. And then my hat's a little crooked, so I'm going to have the left side of it to the right of the nose a little bit, so something like this. I like things off center a little bit, so you can certainly, yours can be straight and very proportionate, but I like mine to be a little bit off kilter on most things. And then I'm just going to bring the top portion up in through here, connect those two pieces, and you could have your buckle bigger than mine or smaller, whatever works for you. This is a cartoon style character, so it does not have to be exactly as mine. And then I'm going to do a little the metal piece that holds the buckle on in through here. Then I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up a touch of black paint, and I'm going to add shadows. So my shadows, my light source is over to the right and maybe up a little bit. I'm going to do my shadows on the left and underneath these pieces. So I just have a bit of black paint on my brush, and if you need to, you can also add a touch of water to your paint or your brush. That'll get it like an ink consistency, which allows you to do nice skinny lines. You can always add more paint, but trying to get these skinny lines is a little difficult when using thick paint. So if you can thin out your paint a little bit, you'll have an easier time getting the thinner lines. And you can spin your brush in your paint on the side of your palette. That will make your brush nice and pointy. So there's a couple of little tricks. Those are a couple of little tricks that you can use to get these nice small lines. I'm going to do one underneath this buckle part and through here, maybe a little bit up on that left-hand side. Make sure it really looks three-dimensional. And then I'm going to wash my brush, wash and dry it to add the highlight to the buckle so it looks nice and shiny. So I'm going to use white paint to start, and if I need to, I'll bring a little bit of that gold color in as well. But I'm just going to add a bit of a light area in through there and in through here, maybe a little bit down the side. And when I'm doing this, obviously I know that my light source is over to the right, but this is meant to look nice and shiny and metallic kind of color, so it can really catch the light from different places, or can be reflecting things off of it. So don't feel that you just have to make one streak of white over on one particular side. Think of it more of like a piece of glass that can reflect these different colors from elsewhere as well. And then once you've got your beautiful buckle all nice and shiny, you can put your small brush away. We're going to use our large brush for the next step, I'm sure of it. And so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are adding the glow from our gold. And it's gonna be very bright and very exciting and just add a lot more life to this painting. So I'm gonna have mine glowing from in through this section. I'm using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are white and yellow. And I'll also use a little bit of water on my brush as well to be able to get these nice, long, natural, almost think of like the sun shining and it's got these rays or beams of light coming off of it. So I'm going to put a touch of white and a touch of yellow on my brush, and I do not need or want a lot of paint. I'm using a firm bristle brush so it will pull that paint and make it nice and see-through as I'm doing this. If you scoop up a whole bunch of paint, you're gonna have a really wide white line that's gonna cover up a lot of your painting. So not a lot of paint, you can even just wipe it off on the side of your palette. And if you want to, you can, to be safe initially, you can add a touch of water to your brush or to your paint. It's always safer to be on the error on the side of caution when doing this type of step. You can, again, always add more, but it's really tough to take off, and you've worked so hard up to this point, you don't want to add these big, wide, thick, white lines onto it. When I'm doing this, I'm going to be using, this is a inherently flat brush, so I'm going to be using it in the skinny way. I'm not going to be using it in the wide way like this. I'll use it in the skinny way like that. I don't think I've ever used my hand as a demonstration before like that, but there's a first for everything, I guess. So I'm adding my white and yellow mixture to my brush with a touch of water, making sure that I've got it the way that I want. I definitely want to have kind of a central location that all of my beams are going to come out of. So I'm going to have them coming out from here, and I'm just going to start pulling. I want them to come out from the same area. They don't necessarily have to come out exactly from the same spot, but I'm definitely going to just have them coming out from a central location, and they can be as far as you want them to go. They can be as short as you want them to go. They can go in front of anything that you want them to go in front of. They can go a little bit in front of your cute little leprechaun's nose. They can come all the way over in through here, and you probably have noticed I have not reloaded my brush yet because I still have plenty of water on my brush, and my paint mixture is allowing me just to kind of continue to put these vibrant strokes in. I do know also that because I had water on my brush that these will probably dry a little bit darker, because when white paint is wet, it will appear whiter on your canvas. As it dries, it's going to be a little bit more see-through and darker. So as this dries, it's going to get a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a couple more layers into this. I just reloaded my brush is kind of the moral to that story. But you can make it as yellow as you want or as white as you want, whatever you want your glow to be. I'm going to add a bit more white in the center area just to really speak to the vibrancy of what's happening in the center here. And again, it doesn't all have to come out of exactly the same spot, because really it's the gold that's shining, and there's lots of pieces of gold within here, or metallic pieces that are illuminating the area. So you can have it come off of several different pieces or locations if you want. I'm just trying to have mine kind of coming out of the central location to speak to where that light source is hitting it. And then we have one tiny little step left to go. So once you've got all of your beautiful beams of gold on here, you can, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So you can put your large brush away, get your small brush out, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think for this one, I'm going to sign it in the bottom left. I'm going to be using my small brush. I am using black paint. I do my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name. Oh, my brush is not cooperating right now. I like to have it nice and pointy, and that's where the challenge was right there. There we go. You could sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol. Whatever you want is totally fine. There is no rules to identifying your painting. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a fun and whimsical image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.